Good afternoon, Nicola. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very good, very good. It's our third episode. We're still
I
going.
I can't believe it's the third episode. It's just amazing the response we're getting as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah. It's gaining some momentum, and lots of people are commenting on it. We had some friends over at the weekend from Belfast, and they'd listened to it as well. So we're getting a big audience. So long
We're
may it
going,
continue.
we're crossing rivers and oceans, aren't we? So that's a good
Absolutely.
start. A good start. So how
Um,
have you been? How's your month been
Yeah, it's been all
since
right.
you've
It's been
gone?
was away last week. I think you've been away recently, haven't you? Fairly
No,
recent.
always away. I'm
Always
always in a
away. Yeah.
sandwich between always away. Well, yeah, you've just come back, then I'm going off to Northumberland in a couple of weeks, so I've got that
Excellent.
to look forward to. But it's just started absolutely tipping it down with rain, after it being absolutely scorchio. So I'm hoping it'll
No,
be back to
no.
scorchio that week. But we
Well,
need it. We need it. That's what my grandma would say about the plants.
well, with that in mind, what's your uplift for this week or this month?
Absolutely easy for me. At the
Go
time
on.
of recording, the England Women's Euros is
Yes.
in full thing. So me and Evie, my stepdaughter, we've got matching England away shirts. So we were watching the Wales game on Sunday. We were very
Six
pleased.
one.
Six
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah.
yeah, by the time this goes out, who knows where we'll have finished. But absolutely loving it. And it's lovely to see. Like the women's game has come on such a long way. I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself. If
Mm.
I could talk about that, but a lot of people know I play my Tuesday night five-a-side, and I just think back in the day, if you could have gone professional, I would have absolutely loved it. But
Who,
I was
who's
quite slow, so I
whose
don't know.
name do you have on the back of your shirt? Or
I
would you
couldn't
have?
pick one. I couldn't pick
No,
one.
not
It'd
Russo.
probably be
Yeah.
Ella Toon, I think.
Oh
If I was
yes.
going to
Yeah.
have one, local lass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
definitely. And what's your uplift?
So, well, a serious one and a less serious one. So, don't know if you've seen this article in the news about the three fathers. I think they call them the walking dads or the dads walking. Who
Yes.
each of them had a daughter who committed suicide, and they've petitioned the government, and now the government have announced that they're going to have mandatory suicide awareness training in schools from 2026 in secondary schools. I mean, it's obviously incredibly sad subject, but that is something really positive that people who've been affected by something so tragic and managed to make a change for the better. So I think that's it's a subject which is as I say something that's layered with tragedy, but it's good that people are able to make a difference. But on the sort of the lighter side, watchers of this podcast will be unsurprised to know that I'm a big Superman fan, and we went to the pictures to watch it last Friday, and I absolutely loved it. And the reason why I mentioned it in the context of this podcast is because the theme was kindness. It was basically there's a bit where Superman says that actually the new punk rock is to care and to be kind. And I thought that was an incredible message. In these divisive times, we don't do politics, we don't do swearing on this podcast, but
No.
just seemed to be such a positive message that people need right now. So I recommend everyone go out and see it because I want there to be more of them for no other reasons. So yeah, those are my uplifts. Have you seen anything in the news that piqued your interest?
I think there's quite a lot going on at the minute, isn't there? Particularly around, I think the interesting thing for us is I recently did a talk with one of our employment team about the right to switch off at work. And there's quite a lot about this at the moment and about, I think it's a good thing in a way. And because emails, we've talked about this before, emails dropping a landing at different times, it can get quite a lot mental health wise
Oh
and
yeah.
it can get completely overwhelming. And I think there's a lot in the news about what Labour are going to do with this. And it's, again, no
Mm,
politics, but it's quite interesting to see the world of work has changed over the last 10 years,
mm.
absolutely a lot. And whether actually there is legislation that can rein that back a bit, or is it so deeply ingrained? And that's, again, a whole other podcast. But it's really interesting me at the minute to watch this and think, well, how are people going to implement it? How is it going to work in real life?
Well, we just had our we just had a meeting, haven't we, to discuss prep for future podcasts, and that's something we should definitely look at.
Mm,
The modern working environment and these proposed changes. I think that's worth a look at, worth a debate as well,
definitely.
because it's difficult, isn't it? It was easy, back in the day before email. It was great. You'd have 2 week turnaround on dealing with post, and in most cases took years to get to trial and all the rest of it. That's because competitively everyone was in the same boat, weren't they? And the
Yeah.
minute things get quicker, the minute things get there's a tool to make things more efficient, then you just have to keep up with it, or from a business point of view, you really struggle. I mean, that's what AI's uh, gonna gonna bring for us, isn't it? That competition to get even quicker and even more efficient. So we should. I know this is a bit sort of inside baseball, as Americans would say, but we should definitely put that on the list. In fact, I'm going to do one.
Well, breaking from producer Catherine has just put in the chat box that she's already added it.
Hey,
And
fantastic!
she gets a shout out again.
Another shout out to producer Catherine. She hates that, doesn't she?
She loves it. She's in my phone now as producer Catherine. Now we've got crying, laughing emojis. I don't
Is
going
she
down there.
crying? Is she
I think
crying or is she
crying
laughing?
and
Yeah.
laughing or laughing. I don't know. I don't know.
So, well, today's episode is it's a first because we have our first um, outsider guest. The first two guests we
We
had
do.
were both Forbes people. Do you want to introduce him?
Yes, welcome to Dave Scholes from Powered by Mates slash Six Connections, who's got a really interesting story and runs a business helping people and companies to start mental health conversations. So, welcome, Dave, to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's very kind of you. I like being the first is very high risk from you people. We'll see where we go. I mean, you've obviously done all the legals beforehand, haven't you? So it'll all be safe and sound with no problems.
It'll all be fine. When somebody edits it, producer
Absolutely.
Catherine, it's
Producer
all fine.
Catherine, yeah. If it all goes wrong, it's producer Catherine's fault.
Yeah, that is,
All right, yeah.
How are you, Dave? It's nice to see you.
I'm really well, mate. Yeah, I'm very hectic, a lot going on, all really positive stuff. But yes, in the midst of all sorts of exciting things, which is keeping me very busy, let's say.
Good stuff. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story and why you do what you do? Because it's really interesting. Having been on some of your programs myself, it's really interesting.
Yeah, fab, no problems. Yeah, so we ended up really with this Six Connections business on the back of my own story around mental health. That's how it all started. I lost my best mate to suicide 14 years ago and embarked on I call it a journey because I think that's a good word to use for it. And I think I've realized over the last few years actually the value in that story and the journey and the things that you've learned along the way. And it's my journey around mental health. 14 years ago, this wasn't a subject that was being talked about as much as it is today. And although I had a little bit of experience of mental health work in the charitable sector, this really was, something that came in from left field. One day my pal's on the planet, the next day he isn't, and I had to deal with that. And over a number of years after that, I got all sorts of different support, some brilliant professional support. I found some stuff that was great. Equally, some stuff didn't work for me, and it wasn't good, and it didn't mean that it was wrong. It just wasn't the right stuff for me. Working in the charitable sector, I had the opportunity to be investing in other people and helping other people, and that was a really valuable thing for me. That really helped me out. But all the way through, I just had this kind of network of friends and family, good people around me. I was really fortunate, and while they couldn't fix everything or necessarily make anything better, I knew they were always there. I got if you ever want a brew, Dave, or a beer, I'm here for you. We can just talk or I can just listen. And that's kind of where the whole Powered by Mates concept came from, really. That value of having people around you, whether that's work colleagues, friends, or family, to talk about this subject. And the concept for the business really was as simple as me getting out of bed about 7 years ago and deciding I was going to create a legacy for my mate and save the world. That was my business plan. because he was, as many people say that are affected by suicide, he was the last person on the planet that I would have thought about not being here anymore. I learned an awful lot around his story after he died from friends and family. And that wasn't a legacy I wanted to create, because this was a mental illness. This was something that he worked on through a lot of challenge, and he just couldn't overcome. I'm going, that's not the outcome. That's not the end of the story here. Didn't know what it was, didn't know what it looked like, what it felt like, but a lot of it came from my own experience. And I think from my experience, the few things I'd realised were, why weren't people talking about this subject when we were doing okay? Why was it only talked about at a point after crisis or closer to crisis, which makes it really difficult for anybody else involved? Why was this not a positive subject? Why couldn't we talk about positive mental health like we talk about positive physical health? And very simply, my Burnley maths said, if we talk about this subject when we're doing okay, it's going to be easier to talk about maybe when we're not doing as okay. And the third piece in the puzzle was, who's looking after the mate in this mix? Who's looking after the person that's brought into this situation, often not by choice, and often suddenly from a left field point of view? Who's looking after them and helping them to start the conversations, or knowing what to say or what to do? And where do they signpost? And there's loads of stuff out there to help people, but it's sometimes quite hard to find, and you don't know what's the right thing. And that's kind of where it came from, really. We wanted to create a program for business and the charitable sector and education that wasn't just a tick box, wasn't just a one-off, let's do a 3-hour course and say we've done mental health. This was about something that was over time and embedding some stuff that you could take away for yourself and other people. But equally, it was a conversation and something that we wanted to get into pubs and coffee shops and onto football terraces as well, because that's where people were. And that was kind of how it developed. And it seems to have grown a few legs in the last 5 years and gone in multiple different directions. And yeah, is creating a legacy for my mate, 100%.
So how do you measure success, Dave? What do you look for in terms of your hope that mental health becomes more of a, because that's something that Nicola and I are very keen to promote, is to remove that stigma, get people talking about it in a way that mental health should be talked about, which is all the time, because everybody has a brain, it affects everybody. So in terms of what you set out to achieve, how do you measure success?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's quite hard to measure, to be truthful. We get asked this an awful lot, and we've done all the standard things. We've just done an impact report with UCLan, and we've got all the facts and figures and the stats. But actually, when I started this, my measure was, if I can keep one person on the planet by doing this, that's the success. And actually, as we've shaped the business, it's actually about creating cultures of care in an organization where you don't need us anymore. It's an horrible business model. It's the worst business model on the planet. Effectively, the aim is that we will be redundant, because if you keep paying us to do the same things over and over again, it's not sustainable in your culture. And how this lands at Forbes is very different to how it would land in another legal industry. It's very different to how it would land in creative or manufacturing. Why? Because your people are different, the way you work is different, the spaces you work in are different. So our measure of success is very much around, and it sounds a little bit cliche because I'm here, is around Nicola ringing me and going, Dave, do you want to be on our podcast that's all around mental health and wellbeing? And me going, yeah. You being on our sessions and in the stuff that we've done for Forbes, you've done something with it and you've made something out of it that hopefully we've had a little bit of an impact on, but you're making it yours. And our big aim now, where we're 5 years into this, is going, okay, the people that have been on our training, that have been involved and they've done the stuff, what's this look like in your business now? Is it a movement? Is it impacting more people? How are we engaging with you? How are we not engaging with you? Because actually this has got legs and people are talking about it without getting a nice reminder from us every month. Then it's a measure of success. We can put stats against it all the time. It's a successful thing that we do. People are doing something with it, but equally it's tactile. and it's how it feels and how it lands and how it matters to you as an organization. It's culture. We're creating cultures of care. You know, this is a movement as far as I'm concerned, rather than a training course. And the more it moves, the more impact we'll have.
Absolutely. One of the things, Dave, when I came on your programs that I really liked was the exercises around listening and really listening.
Yeah.
And I've used that. I think I came on your first program probably about 2 or 3 years ago now, and then did a follow-up program. And there was an exercise we did where we just listened to somebody for 2 minutes, just listened, and then actually heard what they say. And that was the most like impactful thing ever, because I'm a talker and I used to just talk to fill
No.
space. I'm no,
Wow.
I come across as really shy, and but that was it made a massive change to me personally and professionally, because it's that really listening to somebody and trying to understand where they're coming from, and then pick through what's really going on
Yeah.
around other stuff. If you
Yeah.
get a whole load of stuff coming at you, what is really going on there, and then dissecting that down and having a look at it.
And I think that's where we felt there was a gap in this space, because there's a lot of brilliant training around mental health and well-being, but actually that doesn't help you if you're still not comfortable having the conversation. You know, you can do as much training as you want, but if you put the training manual on a shelf and you never pick it up, or you never have a conversation, then you've just been on a training course, haven't you? So again, as you said, that listening element, and you know, we do a session all about the art of conversation, and we do a session that's all about fear and getting over some of the things that get in your way of having those conversations. Because when we talk about those subjects, we actually deal with the practical things of how this can work. Because if you feel listened to and heard and valued in your workspace, mental health and well-being aside, of course you will feel more comfortable in that culture. And if you feel listened to and heard and valued, you're more likely to talk about the more difficult stuff. If you don't feel listened to and heard and valued about everything else, why would you unpack some of your most difficult subjects? And that's the route that we've gone down, really. We kind of felt that we could fill a gap and go, nah, because this is personal development stuff as well. It's culture stuff. These things aren't just around mental health conversations. If, you know, you can use some of this stuff when we talk about responding versus reacting. It's handy when you get an email that's pinging through and you're just about to, you know, do the old keyboard warrior thing, and sitting back and taking a breath, and all those kind of things actually don't just benefit yourself. They benefit the other person that is involved in that dialogue, whatever that looks like. So good. I'm glad you've said that, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. So fab.
Oh, I
I
know.
think
I went on such a journey with it, such a journey. I really did. And then I connected with one of my colleagues on. We found that we'd got so many parallels in our life. She's a little bit more mature than me, only just, but we'd not really spoken before we did this, and we really found so many big life connections. I mean, mainly the big one was that we both had cancer or have
Yeah,
cancer, and that was a big thing. But then all the mental health subjects around that, and all the feelings and scan anxiety and stuff like that, that we've built sort of a little support network now as well, which is amazing. But that was all off the back of that.
because it builds community, and we create that community. I think that's the absolute beauty of it, because obviously we do our sessions within an individual business like yours, as we did, but also we do it in kind of a peer network where you've got multiple different businesses. And what you actually create over the 6 months, which is why we kind of span it out over that period of time, is people connect with other people, not through work and work related things. They connect to other people through life and experiences and hobbies and links like that. So you form this little network of support. You know, we didn't create that for you and your colleague. We created a space for that to be investigated. And again, the movement bit, you've taken that and you're now your little support network. You don't need Dave every week telling you, have you just got in touch and are you all right? You're doing it because
Yeah.
you've created your culture of care. And I think you don't get that with your standard PowerPoint presentation. And that's what it's about, you know, whether that's a one-to-one caring culture or somebody's going back into the business to shape something. That's what we've noticed, you know, people go on a personal journey with this, but they also go on a business journey with it as well, you know, and that's a brilliant thing, because you can benefit in both ways. And And it fluctuates, doesn't it, as well? Some sessions are very much about you. Some sessions you kind of go, oh yeah, I could take that back into my business and do something with it. Becomes really personal, which is great.
You and I, Deb, I don't think we've actually officially met before, but I rejoined Forbes back in September 22, and you did the staff conference that year. So, and I coincidentally only just started my therapy sessions in that same month. So it was really interesting to hear what you had to say about mental health from your own experience, but also within a business context. Because I think you're right. I think that most of the experience I'd had before then, it was very much considered to be a box ticking exercise, and I think that I think you're absolutely. I think it's correct to say actually that this podcast is everyone contributes to that journey that the firm has as a business on mental health, and the help that you've given us is probably what's led to us focusing on the subject and even doing this podcast. But going back to that point about the box ticking side of it, and you use that phrase, so I think your sessions are very very good. They're clearly not they're not sort of just there for the firm to to tick the mental health box, as it were. They're not set up in that way. But how do you? Nicola and I talk a lot about management level and the leadership level, and how do you impress on them the importance of taking the subject seriously rather than just seeing it as a box ticking exercise?
It's really interesting because it's still a very challenging space, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the beauty about kind of the intro that I had to Forbes was that this was semi-built on relationship, but it was equally built on one of your senior leaders really buying into this and
Yes.
championing it. I still remember that the session that we did for you guys, the one that you were talking about, Chris, and being stood at the side of a stage with Pauline bigging me up more than anybody ever has done on the planet. I was at the side of the stage because I knew this landed in manufacturing and I knew it landed in construction. But there was a little bit of me going, I'm about to walk on a stage in a pair of Adidas 3-stripe and a Powered by Mates t-shirt. Does this work in the legal world? And Pauline was on stage, and she'd never met me up until that day as well.
Really?
No,
Right.
the first time we'd met live, and she was very much, oh, you need to follow Dave on LinkedIn and you need to do this. I'm like, Pauline, be quiet. I'm getting full on imposter syndrome. So it's interesting because I talk about that session quite a lot, and actually what it gave me the opportunity to do was present this to your whole organization, the firm as a whole, from the last person that walked through the door as the newest member of staff to effectively the partners and senior leads. And it felt collective and it felt brilliant. And I still have conversations with people now that say, oh, you're the lad that did that thing when we did that session with yeah, I am, and it's brilliant. But I think we're very much around two different rules of thumb here. We like to try and invest in the semi-converted, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, and it's not all culty, but I think there's got to be an element of this where people are bought in to wanting to do something. I think we've over the years bumped into many different organizations that have felt like organizations we would like to work with, but when you actually start that conversation, you know that it's somebody kind of going, oh yeah, we'll just put this through and it'll happen, and it's a tick box. And again, over the years, you get the opportunity to pick and choose a little bit who you work with. And what I've learned an awful lot is that, and this was probably on the back of COVID, I think a little bit, businesses kind of panicking and going, right, we need to put people through some mental health stuff. And, they did all the courses and all the training, all of which I think people should do. I think people should do mental health first aid. I think they should do all the suicide prevention stuff. I think it's really important. But what I'd realized was that a lot of people were being sent on these training courses by a senior lead with the expectation that those people were going to fix the problem without really understanding what needed to be done. So, you've got an organization of 150 people, you've sent 10 people on mental health first aid. The senior lead at the top's gone, right, okay, we've done what we need to do now, brilliant.
Yeah.
They'll go and do it. And I started to have a few cheeky conversations, because I can a little bit, to start to try and unpack some of this stuff. So you actually, you know, I was saying something to a group the other day and said, oh, how are your mental health first aiders doing? And they're like, oh yeah, they're doing a great job. I said, no, how are they doing? They said, I don't know. I said, because if they're not doing great, they're not the best people to be helping everybody else in your organization. And when they actually broke it down, 4 of those mental health first aiders were off for various reasons, some of which were mental health. 4 of them didn't actually work in the main area of the business. So they were actually in an office space, and the majority of the business was elsewhere. So they didn't actually have any dialogue. And the 2 people that were quite proactive were taking on the weight of the world for about 30 or 40 people a piece. Why? Because they had a high-vis jacket that said mental health first aider on it. And I think what we're really trying to focus on with senior leads and leadership teams is saying, look, this is an important subject. This is more than just putting a few people on a training course. What does this look like and feel like to you culturally? And how can we actually make this happen in your space? Because if it can't happen in your space and you can't create the space for it to happen, it's never going to get any traction, and it's never going to go anywhere. And it starts off with a lot of questions around investment. You know, are you saying something? Have you got a nice statement on the wall about people, or do you actually mean this? Are we going to have a go at this? Are you willing to invest the time, invest the money, invest whatever that needs to be to actually make this work? And that's the maker or breaker conversation for me, Chris. And I think some people still need convincing. Some people are still really frightened of this subject, mate, as well. You know, if you come in and start getting people to talk about this subject, will we be able to handle what happens? And I'm going, not your job to fix everybody. And we try to break some of that down by saying you can create a safe space for people to talk in your environment if they want to. But not everybody's going to talk to people in your space because they're colleagues, they're not friends, they've not got that level of relationship. Yeah. So let's not pigeonhole everybody into a direction of this is how we do it, this is how you should get help.
Yeah.
It might be a conversation in the pub with your mate on a Sunday night that allows you to come into work more present on a Monday morning. Nothing to do with what Forbes have done or anything, but that person will be more present. And we're trying to tap into all that as well, just to try and, I guess, break down a little bit of fear around this subject that still exists.
That is the key thing for me is stigma. And what we're trying to do as a firm is sort of just generate what we call a refrigerator hum. So just a general sort of vibe that, you know, mental health is something that can be talked about, but you still get those barriers. We did a survey on a Survey Monkey thing a few weeks ago, and the questions about stigma, and a lot of the responses were, and it brought my heart, they're saying, well, I don't raise it because I'm worried about promotion prospects. Now, it's absolutely no justification for them thinking that from the firm's point of view, but it's a very real issue and one of the main bars. So I just wondered, are there any initiatives that your business has tried or is trialing to that would help somebody who's concerned about the stigma around mental health?
I think it's absolutely about being present as much as we possibly can, and this is, you know, it's probably a little bit of a challenge back to you guys at Forbes as well, because you're an organisation that's been really invested in us over the years, as so many have. But it is an element of how do we keep this momentum going? How do we keep this presence going? How do we keep the relationship going with the organisations that we work with? Because it's brilliant putting X amount of people on a training course and you've got the voice and all that kind of stuff, but yet still somewhere underlying when you produce this document and the questions and the surveys and people talk about something that isn't actually real, is it? That's the reality of it. Talking about this subject isn't going to affect your promotion and isn't going to affect your career. Talking about it actually will benefit your promotion and benefit your career. I had a really interesting conversation with somebody only quite recently who said, I don't really talk about the stuff that I'm going through for fear that people won't buy from me moving forward because of this. And I said, interesting. I would buy from you because of that. And I'll tell you why I'd buy from you because of that, because you know what this looks like. You know what it feels like. and you know how to manage it. So in the times that you are struggling, you know how to manage yourself and you know how to manage your business in those challenges. Somebody that's not talking about this subject doesn't know how to manage it and doesn't know how to deal with it. So halfway through the thing that I buy off you, it might all go absolutely Pete-tong because you don't know what to do with it. And he went, I've never thought about it like that. And actually, it's just reshaping these things, isn't it? Because if this is something that is a challenge, and if this is something that, again, is a normal conversation when you're doing okay, because again, a lot of the danger with surveys and things like that is that they only talk about the point closer to challenge, really. If this was talked about from the perspective of, you know, can we talk about positive mental health all the way through this organization so that at the point of challenge, it becomes the norm because we talk about the things that we do to look after ourselves, then actually some of those stigmas can be brought down. So one of the things that we do with businesses when we're working closely with them is look at all of that stuff that's coming back and going, okay, how do we change the dialogue? How do we create some positive language around this live rather than something on a wall? And my background's marketing and creative, so it actually floats my boat, this stuff of going, how do we actually get this message so that how you present it is believable to your people? Because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you have got multiple things within your organization because of who you are and how you operate that talks really positively around this subject. But yet there's still something in the background where somebody's going, because of stigma or what they've created, not on reality, I can't talk about this subject because it will affect my career. And that's the bit where we're talking about culture. And this isn't something for, you know, this isn't an organization with a bad culture. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about horrific culture conversations here. We're talking about just the little niggles, the bits in the background that we need to chat about. You know, I've done things on the back of events where I've spoken to groups of people where I know the business has a brilliant culture, but people have approached me after the event and said, I've never talked about this at work and I never will. Not because the workspace isn't okay for them to do that, but because their choice is, I want to talk to somebody else about this somewhere else. And it's getting those balances right, isn't it? Of going, how do we normalize this subject so that those stigmas are eased or removed, and dealing with them directly, I think, as a collective is really important.
I suppose so, and people have support networks in different ways, don't they? So some people's support network might be their line manager, some people's support work might be the best mate or somebody. For example, I met up with my friend Katie last night, and she'll love that she gets a shout out because she does listen to. She'll love it. She'll love it. So that's fair. But we go for tea sort of every month, and we just chat. And what we do with each other is her background is that she worked in pubs for years and years, and she's actually brilliant at having mental health conversations because she's worked in a pub and she's talked to all sorts of people. And she's amazing at it, and she could actually go into coaching, I think, as well. But we do a sort of like a no holds barred, have I been reasonable in this situation test? So you go, right, this happened. I was like, yeah, this, and then, and she'll go, no, you were tired, you were oversensitive. You know, you're an idiot there. Nearly swore. You're an idiot. And she'll do the same. And it's like that checks and balances, but it really works. And you go away thinking, oh, I've got that off my chest. I feel better now. I'm ready to go into the next day. But it's just having that mate who's the mate or the colleague or somebody that you can reach out to, isn't it? And just be like, have I been an idiot here? What's going on? This is how I feel. Is this right? Is this right? Is this reasonable?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right there. And I think this comes back to relationship. This is a conversation that you have based on relationship. And I think sometimes, again, you know, we challenge some of those surveys when some of the stuff comes back and goes, we don't talk about this subject in work because of the stigma of career. And I'm going, okay, that's fine. Do you have to talk about this subject in work? I genuinely don't think you do. If you're talking about this subject somewhere where somebody is doing that sense checking and all the things that you talked about, Nicola, you know, you could have 99% of your workforce that don't talk about this subject in work who are doing brilliantly. Why? Because they've got a sense checker outside of work where they talk about this subject and deal with the stuff. And I think sometimes we again, look at this element from a workplace going, you don't have to fix everything. Now, if nobody's talking about this subject anywhere at any point, you've then got a problem, haven't you? Because you've got a lot of people not talking about the subject, but all of your people could have that sense checker and they don't talk about it in work because of that. All you've got to do is break down that stigma in terms of this isn't an issue here, but it still doesn't mean that they have to talk about it in work because that's not their space. You know, half the reason we put our ideas around beer and we put stuff into pubs was for that exact reason that you've talked about. You go into the pub and it's not about beer, it's about community, it's about a safe space. You know, pubs over the years have always been this community space. The amount of landlords and landladies that I know that say that this is a hub where people come in and they talk about finance, they talk about relationship, they talk about mental health. Why? Because it's safe and it's normal and it's and again, it's how can we put the pub into the workspace and just create that element? I mean, in the nicest possible fashion, that the co-working space that we're building over in Burnley at the moment has a bar in it. And I've put a bar in it for a reason, because whether the bar's open or not, if you come into our training session and it feels like a pub and looks like a pub, let me tell you, you'll feel a lot more comfortable because it's a space that you're used to, isn't it? Having a conversation about everything else.
Oh, there's that canteen at Gordon, Nicola.
Oh, I'll get some beer pumps in.
Yeah, absolutely. Get some kegs in. Sure, we've got some brewery clients.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, the Manchester office has something similar. We have the free coffee gimmick, don't we? But it does give people a, you know, they go out and make a coffee together, don't they? And there's a bit of a breakout space and stuff. It's just have that, like you said, that communal safe space, which is just become less and less. Everyone's, you know, in front of their phones or behind a screen. It's such a massive culture change, isn't it?
And it's little drop-ins, Chris. I think that's the key. I think when you send a survey out or you do a training course or you're doing a one-to-one, it's very much dependent on how you're feeling in that short period of time on that day. So if you're filling a survey on a day when you're not doing great, you're not going to provide a brilliant answer. If you're doing a one-to-one on a day where you don't want to unpack some stuff, because again, there's a big part of this where just because you've spotted some stuff in somebody else and you've opened up the opportunity for them to talk, it doesn't mean they're ready to talk back. And I think sometimes we create the spaces, you know, the old school water cooler moment pre-COVID, where we used to just hang around and have a brew with somebody for 5 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day or 4 or 5 times a week, where you just unpack little pockets and got things out your head or your frustration, or you turn around to you and went, I think you're being a bit unreasonable there. And everything didn't escalate as much. And we've missed that. And I think we need to find that and recreate that somewhere and somehow, don't we?
Absolutely. More spaces like pubs and football and sport and wherever, knitting club, choir, anything that floats your boat and gives you a safe space, isn't it?
Yeah. Where do you hang around with people having conversations for lengthy periods of time? They're the places where we need to be. We're looking at hairdressers, beauty salons, barbers, tattoo artists, pubs, restaurant, you know, those kind of places where you are already comfortable. You know, if you're sat having your hair done or you're getting a tattoo, you're with somebody for quite a long period of time where you've got an opportunity to talk and unpack. And again, we're also looking at how do we look after people in those spaces, because nobody ever asks the hairdresser how they're doing before they unpack their absolute world on them. But the reality of it is, when you look at the science behind it, you're not looking somebody in the eye. You're looking at somebody through a mirror. It's not this eye-to-eye contact. You're creating a comfortable environment. And they're the kind of things that we're challenging business to go, okay, what does your space look like for this conversation? Because you want everybody to talk in your space. But if everybody's going to the room where you talk about this, does everybody know before you go in that that's what you're going to? You know, the counselling room or the one-to-one room, you know, that's past 27 desks and you've got to go via 14 people to get in there and everybody knows why you're going into that room. How do you create actual physical spaces for people to have this conversation if they want to, as often or as little as they want to in your space? And I think that's something that we look at an awful lot. You know, how do you make it comfortable if you want to? And how do you make this a really positive, normal subject in the day-to-day? Again, in our sessions, Nick, we did the thing about wins and words and all that kind of stuff, didn't we? So every session you're coming in and you're sharing the word that describes how you're feeling on that particular day, and you're sharing a win from, you know, the last couple of weeks. And really quickly, you get to know how the room's doing without unpacking a load of stuff, but you also celebrate some stuff that's gone really well. And we often try and create solutions for this subject closer to crisis rather than embedding some stuff closer to prevention. You know, you talk about words and wins and all that kind of stuff on a daily basis in your workspace, and that could be colleague to colleague, couldn't it? It could be the person you sit next to. You're already creating opportunity to chat about this stuff. You know, your colleagues that you sit next to, they know about your family, they know that you love football, they know about your dog, they know all about this stuff. So you've actually got more license to talk to them about more stuff because you've got a level of relationship. If this is only a HR subject, you probably don't have that relationship up there because you don't meet them as much, do you? So how do we form those genuine bonds if people want to chat about this subject? That's the key, I think, to this. And it's trying to make it as natural as you possibly can, isn't it? In a work environment, of course.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I've got one. I don't know if you've got any other questions, Nick. I've got one last one.
No, you fire away, Chris. Go for it.
You mentioned at the outset, I mean, your opening answer was just music to my ears, and you mentioned it again since that it's a subject that nobody, when you had your experience, it's a subject nobody was talking about. You know, there wasn't the infrastructure there. And when I decided that I needed to get some help again, it was something that triggered my interest in it rather than it being something that I'd even considered in the past. And I think obviously you had that experience as well. I mean, it must have obviously impacted you in terms of, you know, what led your mate to do what he did, but also how it affected you. I bet you were very surprised by your own reaction. I know that when I started looking into it, I was surprised by my reaction. So I think, and we touched on some of this in terms of how we can within a business try and improve those conversations and what your business does. But I'm thinking about somebody watching this or listening to this podcast who, you know, is wondering whether they need to check in on themselves. I mean, we say a lot, don't we, Nicola, that it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
Check in on yourself. Is there any advice you can give to people out there about how they sense check their own mental health? Have you come across any tips on that?
Great question. Do you know what? It goes right back to the Superman thing, and I love that you started with that. The sense check is starting to be kind. You know, the sense check first is being kind to yourself. It's huge. And I think what we find when we talk about this subject with people is that I think often when you are in that space, you think it's only you in that space. And actually, this is a really normal thing that a lot of other people experience. And again, if we can open up those conversations, and I think the sense check is really important. I think there's a sense check for everybody, even when you're doing well. Because actually the sense check is, I'm doing great at the moment. How can I invest in somebody else? It comes back to kindness, because investing in other people helps you. Because sometimes you might need them. You know, that idea of 6 connections that we talk about in the business, it came from this element of 6 degrees of separation, which I know you guys know about. And, you know, if we're all connected to 6 people, we get to anybody on the planet in 6 people, you can help anybody. So I'm going, right, that's our world-saving model. But equally, I think the sense check for me comes back to how we try to localize this a little bit more. And the local element of this is, you know, if people listening to this, can you reach out to 6 of your mates, 6 colleagues, 6 family members, and talk about this subject, regardless of whether you are struggling with some stuff or whether you're doing great? Because the conversation is, you know, if you're doing great, we're doing brilliantly now, but if we're ever not, I'll be here for you, you be here for me, and we'll go through some of this stuff together. And it's amazing when we've done things like the beers that have been really accessible to people because it started a conversation. How many people have just handed their mate a beer and actually realised that their mate's going through some stuff? Because that interaction and somebody just reaching out and being kind has opened up that conversation. And I think that advice is definitely it. You know, whether you are listening to this podcast going, you know, my mental health's brilliant, I'm doing great. Good. Talk about it. Talk about the things that you do that really help you. I talk a lot about journey in this space because not everybody can relate to what I've been through, and nobody can relate to how I dealt with it because it's very unique, but they can relate to some of the things that I did on the journey that can benefit them on their journey, regardless of the circumstance. And we don't talk about journey enough. There are things that you'll have done in your journey, Chris, and there'll be things that you've done on your journey, Nick, that will help other people. It won't be the same things that will help them from my journey, but that's the thing. And I think, you know, we say to people, get the numbers in your phone, you know, the support lines, the signposting signs, you know, the number for Samaritans and things like the Hub of Hope that we work with, so that if this conversation ever comes into your world, you can do the listening thing. That you're not focusing on, oh, what am I going to do next? How do I fix this? How do I make that better? You know you've got the stuff there if it goes in a downward trajectory, to give you the space to actually listen to what the person's saying and just be present. But it comes right back to being kind, doesn't it? Be kind to yourself, you know, find a win in the midst of everything. Have that conversation, because if you have that conversation with the right person that you've built a relationship with up, you know, somebody close, a friend or a family member, I absolutely guarantee that relationship and that conversation won't be as negative as you think it is in your head. Because actually, when you start to talk about this subject, it's something that affects an awful lot of people. It's something that people are extremely empathetic about. And often the people that want to help, you know, you've said there, it's okay not to be okay. It's actually really hard to talk about this subject if you're not okay. But it's equally really hard to reach out to somebody if you're not used to having these type of conversations. And the kindness comes in there of going, you know what, I might get it a bit wrong. I might not reach out at the right time. And equally, I think the other thing that we talk about an awful lot is, even if you've reached out to somebody and they don't respond straight away, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means they're not ready to talk, or they don't want to talk to you. And that's okay too, isn't it? Because they might choose somebody else, but you'll have done something just to sow the seed where maybe somebody just thinks and stops and goes, you know what, I might just need to do a bit of a check-in here. I might just need to do something for myself. You know, looking after yourself first is key. You can't look after somebody else if you're not okay yourself. We talk about this in the sessions all the time. You know, on the plane, you put your oxygen mask on first, don't you, before you help anybody else. And rule number one, how are you doing today? How are you before you even start to think about investing in other people? You get that right, you're a little bit kinder to you, you're a little bit kinder to the people around you. That's what the whole Powered by Mates thing is about. That's how we save the world.
Fantastic.
What a message to finish on there.
Superman themed podcast. I absolutely love it.
I think so. And I think save the world and kindness. That's the theme of today, isn't it?
That was bloody brilliant, wasn't it, Nicola?
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you, Dave.
So much better than last week. I'll get in trouble for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's much appreciated. I loved it.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Dave. We really appreciate you coming on. So thank you for that, and lots of words of wisdom there.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And you'll need to come and have a look at the new space.
Oh, you won't get me away. Now I know there's a podcast studio.
You can go on tour. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Podcast on tour.
Well.
Watch this space. And on that note, we'll leave everyone hanging.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.